What's up, YouTube? So this is going to be another video. It's going to be a sales pitch presented by me to you in order to convince you to play the best league starters. Now, this is coming from a perspective of a two-time former world champion in PoE, the race events. Not really, but you get my drift. I have played most of these builds before. I am trying to look out for your health and safety in the new league. I don't want you to be crashing and burning out, playing some shitty-ass starter. I just want you to survive, thrive, prosper, and kill all of the endgame bosses and show PoE that you're a lot better than the average player, right? So I want you to become this circle over here, and I want you to become a fully shaded circle, right? You want to have done all the endgame. You want this build to be a banger. You don't want to be playing some crappy self-cast, I don't even know, lightning tendrils or something like that. Who knows? But let's get straight into it. And these are my top 5. I have looked through almost every single build. I went on YouTube. I literally typed in 3.17 league starters, 3.18 league starters, and I pretty much just looked through all the builds. I played most of these myself, or I've helped my girlfriend play it. And I know most of these builds, and I do think that these are my top 5. And these are just top 5. There could be top 6, but top 5 just sounds a lot better, right? And too many options, too many decisions. People just lose their mind. They don't even know what to do anymore. They just give up and they probably quit the league. So these are my top 5. Oh yeah, and I needed to mention, these top 5 are not in any order. I think that every single one of these builds are capable of doing all the endgame. They excel at different things, but number 1 is EA Ballista Totems. And man, oh man, this build is going to take PoE by storm. You will see this build at 25% play rate, guaranteed. Maybe not that high, but it will be really high. This is the build of the league. There's no other way of putting it. There's a lot of popular streamers pushing for it. There's a lot of people who've tried it out. They like the numbers on PoB. You can take the character, make it naked, still have like a couple mil DPS baseline. But number 1 thing, you must like Totem playstyle. And that is something I must stress. You must like Totem playstyle. If you like a more active playstyle, if you don't like just putting down a totem every now and then this is not going to be the playstyle for you. You have to make sure you like the playstyle. That's the number 1 thing in choosing a league starter. You want to make sure you like how the build plays. You want to try it out a little bit, maybe in leveling, maybe get some maps done on it. And yeah, this build also has a recovery issue. It doesn't have any sort of life recovery outside of using life flask. This can be solved with masteries on the tree. You could get flash charges gained every second and the flash mastery. So you can solve this issue. It's just not the build strength, right? So if you do an invitation or boss fight, you get hit around a lot, you run out of flash, your character is shit out of luck. There's going to be no regen for you. It's a great all-around character, and this is pretty much a do-it-all character. It's good at mapping with Ignite Proliferation. Ignite Proliferation feels really, really good for mapping. There's really no downside to this character. It does great damage. It does really well in the campaign. It does really well in mapping. It does really well in the end game. It's also decently tanky with grace, determination, and 100% spell suppression. This is something I'm going to be emphasizing throughout all of these builds, is that all of these builds will pretty much be running grace, determination, spell suppression, and Defiance Banner. The quadruple auras that make every single build tanky. Or not quadruple auras, but these 4 aspects will make every single one of these builds tanky. It will make all the endgame boss fights a lot easier. Now, a downside of this build is it is very meta, and certain uniques will be very expensive. Rain of Splinters is one of these uniques. Kaom's Heart could be very expensive early on, but in the end, there's really not that many uniques, and it's not going to be super, super expensive. There's not even really any large cluster jewel the build has to use, and crafting the bow is pretty much just a lesson in how to craft a +3 toxic rainbow and using essences perhaps. So even though it will be meta and some of the core uniques might be very expensive, the core uniques are also not really core and you don't really need it. And this build will just be an all-around banger, right? And it also has very smooth leveling with Armor Brand and Cremation. Pretty much some of the best leveling skills you can possibly have. Now, one disclaimer is that the leveling tree is kind of weird because it does go all the way down to the bottom of Duelist area to pick up Panopticon to get more totem nodes. So there is going to be a lull in the character, but that's also when your character's wand crash will be carrying it all the way through. So extremely, extremely good leveling experience still. And most importantly, it has incredible endgame DPS of low gear investment with high uptime. And this is something to stress about in which is high uptime. A lot of builds have this like theoretical damage, but the damage is not really reached that often because Ignite Prolif is just something that you can, or Ignite builds in general, and also Totem builds. You put it down, you're guaranteed for the Ignite to be rolling. It's kind of like Stormbrand, and you will see that you can put down the totems, you can run away. You're not even doing damage to the boss directly, but your totems are pretty much spreading the Ignite, and the boss could be moving around, and it's still going to be burning for a significant chunk of damage. So overall, this is going to be one of the best League starters. I guarantee it. But you need to make sure you like the totem playstyle. You need to make sure that you can handle a character without the best recovery. And yeah, but overall, top tier League starter, and I thoroughly recommend it. Next up, we have one of my favorites. This is the build I took to level 100 in both SSF softcore events, and it is Poisonous Concoction, Pathfinder, or Occultist. This is kind of a pick your own poison sort of ascendancy choice. Oh, poison and pick your own poison, eh? So Pathfinder, better overall character. It has better flash sustain. I think it ends up with better endgame DPS. It's just a kind of almost a faster character in the end once you get everything up and running because of the move speed that you get. But Occultist is a much better mapper early game. It has much better clear because of Profane Bloom. And it also has, what's it called? Like the Profane Bloom will pretty much carry you in maps for a very long time. Now, this character is strong throughout all stages of game, and it can scale into the game with enough investment. So you're looking into getting influence gear with like Chaos Dot Multi or maybe some of the new Eldritch mods. You're also trying to get a -9 Chaos Res Helm, which helps out a lot. Now, the main problem with this build is that its endgame DPS kind of like is not the highest. You're not going to be reaching endgame damage where you just immediately one-shot the boss and instantly kill it. However, with enough investment, you will be doing Wave 30 Simulacrums pretty easily on the Pathfinder variant. You have an incredibly good defensive profile for doing Simulacrums. You have Grace, you have Determination, you have 100% spell suppression, you have Defiance Banner. Sounds like the exact same defensive auras as the last build, right? Or defensive layers. Every single one of these builds will have nearly the same defensive layers. And in addition, it will have nearly 100% uptime of Flash with the Pathfinder variant. And one thing to note is this character, incredible leveling experience. Probably one of the best leveling experiences you could have, purely because it just does so much damage, because so much of the base damage of the spell is high, and also a lot of the base damage is baked into rolling a life flask. You try to roll the life flask to have the highest life recovery total possible, and then Poisonous Concoction does a portion of that as chaos damage. So pretty much as soon as you get a Divine Life Flask, you can pretty much roll your endgame weapon right away, which is actually your life flasks. So incredible scaling, incredible mapping, incredible leveling. Only big problem is that endgame DPS will never become like one-shot territory. You'll never be super crazy strong. However, you'll be able to farm Simulacrum. Plague Bearer will carry your clear. Plague Bearer is pretty much like playing Poison Blade Vortex back in the day or Poison BFBB. And I very much enjoyed this character. And I do think that if I was playing a Witch or a Ranger build, I would definitely be league starting as Poisonous Concoction. No doubt in my mind, right? Because it's just that strong and it's strong at all stages of the game. And next up, do we have a crowd favorite? What is this one? It might be Lightning Strike, right? Let's see what it is. And it is Lightning Strike Raider / Berserker. Now we go into the age-old problem of which one is easier or better to play. Now I'm going to put it in simple terms. Raider, easier to play, struggles in high res and low gear. This is a problem that was observed throughout last league. A lot of people, Raider felt amazing all the way through, and then they reached kind of a brick wall in like high reds with the map bosses. And then once they got a little bit more gear, they took advantage of focus crafts and just like getting more flat damage or wet on their gear. they were able to do the maps, and then they were really tanky because they had spell suppression, and they also have free elemental ailment immunity pretty much with the tree. Now, Berserker is more buttons. You have to press 2 additional buttons, which is Berserk and a War Cry, which is General's Cry at this point. So you could use a numlock trick, which pretty much just holds down the button for you the whole time. But Berserker nearly does like roughly double damage. In some cases with super endgame gear scaling, it will be probably even more. With the new unique jewel for super late game, I expect Berserker probably to do like 2.5 times damage or something. However, Raider does have a better defensive damage profile at the start. You get easier captive spell suppression. Although with the new Lightning Strike Berserker pop I made, I did factor into spell suppression, and I did get max spell suppression on the build. So spell suppression is not really too much of an issue. And you can pretty much boil that down to the playstyle difference of whether you want to press those 2 extra buttons and keep track of your rage for Berserk, because that's pretty much the main difference. And the main trade-off of the damage. But both builds levels with Spectral Helix, and leveling with Spectral Helix is super good, but transitioning to Lightning Strike might be a little bit of a challenge. You have to know you have to get a good claw, and it does require a little bit of practice, and also some bit of patience in not switching over too soon. I will be leveling with 2-handed Spectral Helix, and then swapping over to either Claw Spectral Helix or Claw Lightning Strike, depending on how it feels. Right away, Spectral Helix just has incredible base damage scaling. You can definitely finish the axe in like 3 hours and 40 minutes with some practice easily on Berserker, even with a scuff leveling tree where you're traveling to the ends of the earth to get claw nodes. So, biggest point of this build, and any attack-based builds in general, if you're able to play it at League Start, is the extreme endgame scaling. You reach the endgame scaling potential of pretty much trivializing all of the endgame bosses. You will pretty much be one-shotting the bosses. As you can see here in the clip down there below that Maven is just getting evaporated like a wet noodle, right? So you will be able to scale this build to insane potential. It also is possible to make the best build in the game once you get a 12-link claw and Squire. But for most people, that's out of reach. But it's always nice to know that your build has the potential to be one of the highest DPS builds in PoE history, right? Oh wait, I did not mean to go back like that. But basically, very tanky with determination, 100% spell suppression and life gain on hit recovery, and max elusive effect. You are very, very strong like that. You don't run Grace in this setup because you have to run Anger as your offensive aura. So it's kind of annoying. But I think the elusive effect and the life gain on hit recovery, every single time you attack with a claw, you get back like 50, 60 life. And with attacking like 30 times per second and your life leech, you'll pretty much be leeching like 2,000 life per second back. So this is like the opposite of the EA Ballista Totem, where it actually has amazing recovery. Now, one of the biggest issues with this build is Lightning Strike gets stuck on pebbles. This is why you see this thing right here. Lightning Strike gets stuck on pebbles. Lightning Strike gets stuck on pebbles. That's actually just something I have to repeat to you over and over again so you get it into your mind. Lightning Strike gets stuck on pebbles. What that means is that if it's a bad layout map like Flooded Mines, I'm not sure if that map is removed in this iteration of the Atlas, but it feels awful to play. I cannot stress that enough. However, if you play this build, you can transition over to Strange Stacker, Venom Jar, and the pebbles are gone, right? That's the worst part about Lightning Strike. It also has a pretty cool MTX too to boot. But next up, we have Jung Rowan's Spectral Helix Poison, and I actually really do like this one. And this is Jung Rowan's Spectral Helix Poison Assassin. I am playing a video down there of his YouTube guide real fast, so you have something to watch besides me. So Spectral Helix, number one thing to emphasize, Spectral Helix is not for everyone. Spectral Helix is not for everyone. That's one of the biggest things you have to emphasize. Every single one of these League starters, you have to find a skill you enjoy more than how strong it is. All of these League starters are very strong that I'm recommending. You can't go wrong with any of them, but you have to find a playstyle you enjoy. Now, straight off the bat, map clear is not the best. I played this build a little bit in Anomaly, and the map clear is definitely not the best. It's not the slowest either because Spectral Helix is pretty fast and you have Nightblade movement speed. And it's actually it just feels not the greatest for a lot of people, especially if you do not like delayed damage. Now, the problem with delayed damage is delayed damage makes mapping kind of annoying because you have to backtrack to loot. So if you go past a mob and then you hear something on your loot filter, you have to go back. So you can see he's already running past the mobs a lot of times before they're actually dead, especially if you're trying to min-max your map clear speed. Now, the benefit is that the map clear speed doesn't, the map single target damage is insane. You can do all bosses. You can do the fear. I know he did the fear, hit in all of the hardest mavens multiple times deathless with almost no investment on the gear. I think he was able to do it with around 1x investment. The character is incredibly tanky purely because it's running Grace, it's running Determination, it's running 100% spell suppression, it's running Defiance Banner, it has elusive effect, it has life gain on hit recovery because it's claws. So again, you can see the build has the same defensive layers as every single other one. And if you see a build that's not running these defensive layers, the build is probably hot garbage. I'm not going to lie. If the build doesn't have these defensive layers, your build is going to be eating the grave. Guaranteed. Especially when you do harder content, right? So why does this build do so much damage? Spectral Helix has insane base damage scaling. It's like 250% at level 20. It abuses Nightblade for crit multi. And the way that Perfect Agony works is, let me see if I can bring this over, is that you can see here that Perfect Agony converts your multi to dot multi. And dot multi, you can see, is pretty hard to get on a tree. And with how much Nightblade crit multi you're getting, and just crit multi in general from Assassin, you are able to get a lot of dot multi, more than you normally would actually be able to at this level of investment. And you're able to do an insane amount of poison damage, and you're able to take on the end game, kill everything with a shoestring budget. But the biggest problem, like any poison build, is that it caps out relatively early on. And that is the biggest problem. And the fact that a lot of people just don't enjoy the playstyle of delayed damage. Now, Poison's Concoction is kind of the same thing, but you do have a little bit more damage in that it's up front than Spectral Helix, because Spectral Helix still has to go through its rotations to apply all of the poisons, instead of Poison's Concoction, where it pretty much is all shotguns on one cast. So definitely a very strong build. I do advise you to try out Spectral Helix perhaps in love lane or mapping, just to make sure you like it, and try it out with Poison, because this is definitely a build that some people could roll, and even though it's really strong, they could just hate the playstyle. However, I do think it's actually one of the strongest starters for its budget price. Next up, and the last one of the top 5, we have Skeleton Mages. Now, one thing you'll notice in life, you always have death and taxes. And another thing is you'll always have a minion build that's almost number 1 at the start of every single league. Now, the reason being is that minions are just a really fun playstyle for a lot of people, but a lot of people also do not like the playstyle. Now, the thing about Skeleton Mages is it utilizes this unique jewel called Dead Reckoning that converts all of your skeleton warriors into mages, or it has 15 mages, up to 15 mages, I think. Now, this is super nice. It does a lot of damage. It's actually unnerfed in 3.17, but the problem with the jewel is it's kind of expensive at the start. I think it costs around 25-30 chaos when I checked it on a website for last league. And that means you'll just have to play with like regular summon skeletons and zombies and specters until you can afford the jewel. So you can probably go do some heist, of course. Heist definitely one of the best currency making methods. Don't ask me why I'm promoting heist though. But mostly it does require some expensive clusters to scale into super endgame. However, you don't really need it. You can pretty much just get the jewel, you get some life and resist gear, and you'll be able to do everything in the game. It also ends up being one of the best Wave 30 Simulacrum farmers on an extreme budget. I'm not really sure why it does so much damage. It just does. And I guess your minions act as a buffer against Kosis and stuff like that. But I definitely know that Skeleton Mages was one of the first builds that actually ended up doing Simulacrum. And the budget level that it was able to do it on was pretty insanely low. Now, the one big problem with this build is that it's not the tankiest build around. If you look at most of the pobs on PoE Ninja, it does not have like Determination or Grace, or even 100% spell suppression in a lot of cases. Now, the reason being is that they run some other damage auras, but they do have block and spell block, max block and max spell block. They run Tempest Shield, and they also have Bone Offering from Necromancer. Now, this is definitely an all-arounder build. It's a very strong bosser. It has decent map clear, not exactly the fastest map clear in the world, but the biggest thing that is a problem, as you can see down here, is screen clutter. My girlfriend did try out this build, and she didn't really like the AFK playstyle of Minion. Like I said, Minion playstyle is not for everyone. but also the screen is incredibly cluttered at times, especially when you summon skeletons. However, this could be a benefit for a lot of people. A lot of people like having a lot of friends around, and they like the visual effect. So this is not really a downside for some people. But this build, super strong. Make sure you like the minion playstyle, can do all content. One of the most budget Wave 30 Simulacrum farmers you could find. Not the tankiest character, but your minion is more to make up for it. And now we're gonna go into the honorable mentions and the bait category. So these are the honorable mentions. I give them a little ribbon, and I give some reason why they are in the honorable mention section. CFKB Gladiator. Now the reason I put it in there is because it's bad single target. I wouldn't even touch the Tornado Shot variant. Kinetic Blast is a much better League Start variant if you do decide to play this. Amazing mapper, probably actually the fastest mapper out of the top 5, but the single target is just absolutely atrocious, and it is not really fixable without a lot of gear. The new amulet mods in the core mod pool could potentially fix this build single target. So definitely keep an eye out, and if you do like the playstyle, you can still play it. It's definitely strong enough to be played. Seismic Trap Exsanguinate, this probably should have been in the top 5. The only main issue is we don't really know how nerfed Seismic Trap actually is. But even if Seismic Trap never overlapped, you can scale duration, you can scale cooldown recovery, you can scale trap throw speed, and it's not going to be as big of an issue. You will just have to scale it in different ways rather than AoE. Exsanguinate got like a slight 10% damage nerf after accounting for its buff. So definitely super strong build. I do know that this is what Darky or Lighty or a lot of hardcore SSF people are planning to play in the new league in hardcore SSF to try to push for the first boss. This build has amazing defense. It has amazing recovery. Its damage is really strong. It's a good mapper in general, but definitely make sure you like the trap playstyle. I think that's actually the biggest takeaway from all this is make sure you like the playstyle. Now, Shock Nova Mines is a build I actually tested out on stream. I leveled it up a little bit. Now, this build is actually pretty squishy. You can make it a little bit tankier, but then when you make it tankier, you're pretty much losing the biggest benefit of this build, which is the potential to instantly give bosses by placing down a bunch of mines beforehand. Now, the bossing capability of this build is disgusting. Whenever you see a League Star, you see a lot of people offering boss carry services. A lot of them you'll see are actually some miner, whether it's Pyroclast mine, it's Fireball mine. But in this case, I did try out Shock Nova mine because someone in my chat suggested it. It does have a cool mechanic where it does double damage if you place it in the correct area. So overall, very strong character. If you're into bossing, map clear is actually surprisingly good for a miner because you can use Astral Projector and the mines will auto-target onto the enemies. Now, next up, we have Bane Occultist. I don't really know much about this build. I just see it floated around a lot. I know it has pretty good damage. It is decent at bossing. I know the map clear speed is not exactly out of this world, but it does seem like a very solid character. It has good enough defenses. Every single one of these builds have good defenses, in my opinion, outside of Shock Nova Mines. And it's just about getting spell suppression, right? So now we're into the section of potential baits. And this is you right here, right? You are standing here trying to look for a League Starter, and this is that one creator on YouTube or some random person on a PoE Reddit with their build guide saying self-cast is viable. This is the carrot so that you're looking at. See, you're going to eat the carrot and you're going to get hit on the head with the stick because not everything is viable just because it got buffed. Self-cast spells. Damage buff probably does not change mechanical limitations. Biggest problem with self-cast is the fact that you're standing in place. And it's just really bad to stand in place, right? So if you're playing like Lightning Tendrils, you're going to be standing in place. You're going to be taking the D from the boss, right? The boss is going to mess you up. Now, you might say, oh, what if I get a lot more cast speed? Well, guess what? You don't actually get that much cast speed while leveling up or early on. Most of the cast speed buffs are all on mods on items. There's no cast speed more multiplier. So in the end, the mechanical limitation of self-cast spells is just as bad. Now, there is a potential for stuff like Blade Vortex, stuff like Winter Orb to be better because those spells do not get affected by the cast speed as badly. Blade Vortex people use Unleash, but Unleash does not actually lower the damage of Blade Vortex because Unleash actually got nerfed. So Blade Vortex strictly got a 40% damage buff, and it actually feels amazing to play if you can survive, right? Now, a lot of people have also been floating around a lot of bow league starters. This is kind of an unknown at this point. I do know that even though you think that bows got buffed a lot of the skills relied on Hydra Spear for like getting more damage output. And people say, oh, you can put it on Asenath's Chant for Tornado. However, the Tornado does spawn on top of you, meaning that you have to be right next to the boss. I do know for some skills like Lightning Arrow, the single target without Hydra Spear is literally cut in half. So I'd be very wary about bow league starters. Bow builds are also notoriously squishy. And if you do try to invest more in the defense, then you're pretty much left in the same scenario where we're just doing the same amount of damage as last patch, but you just are slightly more survivable. So definitely watch out for these two. I do know that these are the themes of the league and that they did get buffed, but as you may know, sometimes not every single buff will make the skill meta, right? I'm pretty sure we've had bow leagues in the past, if you remember, and bows never became meta, right? But hopefully you guys like this video. It was pretty fun to make, trying to find the top 5 league starters. I do think that those 5, along with Seismic Traffic Sanguinate, will be your best bet to league start in Archnemesis and complete all the end game. If you do notice, the main things about all those builds, they all are pretty tanky. You don't go into the PoE and see that the build has like 1,000 or 5,000-6,000 max hit. If you have 5,000-6,000 fizz max hit, and you're gonna be dead. And there's just no other way to put it. If you play without determination, you don't have armor, you will be dead. There's no other way around it. You will be dead. You should go look at the max hit taken. You should go take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I want to be dead or do I want to play one of these top 5 league starters? There probably will be other league starters that come out as people try to do more brainstorming, and I'll try to keep you updated. Now, in terms of guides, I will be making 3 guides total. One will be EA Ballista Totem. Another one will be Lightning Strike Berserker. And the last one will be up to you guys. So let me know down in the comments below which one you would like to see. If there's a new skill that you would like me to do, perhaps I could also do it. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more Mirrors, Exalts, and Mage Bloods than me. And see you next time. Bye.